What if we built cloud cities on Venus? Imagine this. It's the year 2135. Earth has become increasingly volatile. Climate disasters, political instability, dwindling resources. Humanity, ever ambitious, looks upward not just for escape, but for reinvention. Mars? Too dry, too cold. The Moon? Too barren. But then, an idea reemerges from the archives of speculative science. What if we didn't go down to a planet's surface, but stayed in the clouds? Enter Venus, Earth's twisted twin. On the surface, it's a nightmare. Temperatures hot enough to melt lead, crushed beneath a sky thick with carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid clouds. But, at 50 kilometers above the surface, the atmosphere is strangely calm. Temperatures hover around 70 degrees. Air pressure is similar to Earth's. Here, in a place so hostile below, a narrow band in the sky offers an eerie oasis. And so, the great experiment begins. Operation Aphrodite. A fleet of massive airships, each the size of Manhattan, is launched into Venus's atmosphere. They float effortlessly, thanks to helium-filled chambers, like ocean liners in the sky. These are the first cloud cities, self-contained ecosystems, brimming with human life, suspended in the Venusian heavens. The world watches in awe. For the first time, humanity isn't just visiting another planet. We're colonizing it, mid-air. The symbolism isn't lost. In Venus's hellish embrace, we've built a new Eden. But no one can predict what's coming next, because the moment we touch Venus's skies, we wake something up. What makes Venus so strange? And why would humans even consider living in its clouds? Let's dive into the physics, the biology, and the beauty of this impossible dream. Let's pull back and ask the obvious. Why Venus? Why choose to build cities above a world synonymous with hellfire when Mars sits just a bit further away, offering a solid surface and none of that acid rain? The answer lies in one of the strangest paradoxes in the solar system. Venus, while deadly below, is oddly hospitable in the skies above. Roughly 50 to 55 kilometers above Venus's surface, the conditions are surprisingly similar to Earth. The atmospheric pressure is almost identical to sea level on Earth. Unlike Mars, where your blood would boil from the low pressure without a full-body suit. Even more surprising, temperatures in this altitude band hover between 68 to 86 degrees, 20 to 30 degrees. You wouldn't even need heating or cooling systems to survive, just protection from the atmosphere itself. But that's a big caveat. The air is 96% carbon dioxide, with dense clouds of sulfuric acid. One breath, and you'd be dead. So the first step? Sealed habitats. Think floating space stations, but designed for life inside a planet's atmosphere. These structures are built with acid-resistant materials, fluoropolymers and ultra-thin graphene coatings, capable of repelling corrosive particles. Add high-efficiency oxygen recycling, solar power arrays suspended above the cloud deck, and you've got a self-sustaining sky-high arc. Biologically, the challenges are intense but manageable. Radiation levels are actually lower than on Mars, thanks to Venus's thick cloud cover. And because gravity is about 90% of Earth's, our bones and muscles wouldn't atrophy the way they would in microgravity. We could, amazingly, walk, run, even dance, almost as we do back home. And yet, humans are not just biological machines. We need meaning, connection, and a sense of control. That's where things start to crack. Life in these cities begins as an idealistic marvel. Scientists, engineers, and dreamers from across the globe live in sleek modules connected by transparent tunnels. Children attend school under filtered sunlight. Gardens bloom in artificial biospheres, but isolation seeps in. Venus has no day-night cycle like ours. Its day lasts longer than its year. Psychological disorientation becomes common. To cope, the cloud cities develop their own artificial cycles. Some simulate 24-hour days with internal lighting. Others lean into Venus's rhythms, creating month-long festivals to match the slow-moving sun. Over time, a unique Venusian culture starts to emerge, shaped not by land or sea, but by altitude and pressure. And still, a mystery brews below. Instruments detect seismic patterns on the surface, movements too regular to be tectonic. Is it geological activity, or something stranger? What chain reactions are set off by our arrival in Venus's skies? And how do Earth and its people respond to this bold leap into the unknown? When the first cloud cities rise above Venus, humanity celebrates. News outlets run headlines like, "New Atlantis in the Sky," and "Humanity now lives on two worlds." Earth unites in rare consensus, a moment of shared triumph. But, as always, bold moves ripple outward in ways no one expects. First, there's the scientific explosion. Instruments aboard the Venus habitats detect previously unnoticed anomalies, rhythmic magnetic pulses from deep inside the planet, and sharp spikes in atmospheric electricity. Some scientists speculate these are natural, perhaps caused by superheated surface convection currents. But others whisper a more unsettling possibility, that our arrival is triggering changes in the planet itself. Then comes the diplomatic fallout. The United Nations Space Oversight Council, hastily formed after Mars privatized land disputes, is caught off guard. No nation claimed Venus, yet now the American-led Aphrodite Consortium controls a fleet of cities in its atmosphere. China and the European Union demand equal access. Tensions flare as new cloud platforms are planned, some militarized, some built by megacorporations rather than governments. Space, it seems, may become the new Cold War theater. Meanwhile, back on Earth, culture reacts in real time. Venusian fashion, influenced by anti-corrosive materials and sleek compression gear, hits the runways of New York and Tokyo. Pop stars perform in weight-adjusted suits, mimicking Venus gravity. Conspiracy theorists claim the Venus cities are hiding alien ruins. Religious leaders call the endeavor both divine and blasphemous. But inside the cities, another kind of drama unfolds. Supply shipments from Earth are delayed after a solar flare disrupts space traffic. For 2 weeks, the habitats operate under strict rationing. That's when the social experiment begins to fray. Citizens debate autonomy. If they are hundreds of millions of miles from Earth, shouldn't they govern themselves? The first movement for Venusian sovereignty is born. On the scientific front, biologists begin experimenting with modified Earth organisms to test long-term adaptation in Venus's atmospheric chemistry. One breakthrough involves genetically engineered cyanobacteria that can float in the upper cloud layers, feeding on CO2 and producing trace oxygen. This stirs radical speculation. Could we terraform the sky rather than the surface? Then, the first major incident. Cloud City Aphrodite 3 vanishes from radar. No distress signal, no debris. Just silence. Surveillance drones sent into lower altitudes return mangled, corroded, and one carries data suggesting a brief surge in localized gravity below the city's last known coordinates. Suddenly, the question is no longer just, can we live on Venus? It's, what have we awakened by trying to? What happens when the environment begins to fight back? We explore Venus's strange and dangerous reactions, and how Earth's ecosystems tremble in response. In the aftermath of Aphrodite 3's disappearance, the cloud cities enter lockdown. Travel between platforms is halted. Communications are filtered through encrypted channels. Teams of exogeologists and atmospheric physicists scramble for answers. Was it sabotage? A mechanical failure? Or something more alien? Then the sky changes. Venus's upper atmosphere, usually a slow-moving soup of sulfuric haze, suddenly roils with super-rotation spikes. Wind speeds double in some areas, reaching over 600 km/h. 370 km/h. Clouds darken, thickening to levels unseen since the Magellan probe era. One city, Helios 7, is caught in a vortex that hadn't existed just weeks before. It's only saved by emergency tethers deployed into a more stable atmospheric band. Scientists begin noticing bizarre energy readings from the planet's surface. Thermal scans show large patches of increasing heat, as if something beneath the crust is stirring. Venus has no plate tectonics, but it's long been suspected that massive volcanic events occur every few 100,000 years. Could our presence have triggered one? Meanwhile, the floating biospheres, once pristine testbeds for photosynthesis and agriculture, begin to experience ecosystem chaos. Engineered algae designed to clean the air starts mutating, producing sulfur-based toxins. Insects brought from Earth to pollinate hydroponic plants die en masse. Botanists scramble to replace contaminated crops, while air filtration teams race to prevent respiratory emergencies. And then comes the rain. Venus's sulfuric acid droplets have always been a known hazard, but now they begin to concentrate. Small breaches in city exteriors, once manageable with nanosealant patches, begin corroding faster than expected. Engineers theorize that microelectromagnetic anomalies, possibly tied to those mysterious magnetic pulses, are ionizing the clouds above the cities, turning the acid more reactive. Back on Earth, strange effects ripple outward. Earth's atmosphere sees minor but measurable changes, tiny shifts in ionospheric density and magnetic field turbulence, likely due to Venus's growing activity. Northern lights appear unusually far south. Communication satellites intermittently blink out. Some theorists worry that if Venus enters a period of hypervolcanism, it could release enough sulfur into its atmosphere to reflect more solar radiation, subtly altering solar input on Earth over time. In response, global ecological think tanks convene. Comparisons are made to Earth's past. The Permian-Triassic extinction, known as the Great Dying, was likely caused by massive volcanic emissions that triggered runaway greenhouse effects. Now we may be seeing the reverse, a runaway albedo event, where Venus's cloud changes might cool nearby orbital paths, subtly shifting Earth's climate over decades. Daily life starts to warp under the looming shadow of this interplanetary storm. Children in the Venus colonies grow up with no knowledge of blue skies. Artists paint in grayscale palettes. Psychologists report growing cases of cloud vertigo, a condition triggered by constant, unchanging cloud cover and lack of ground reference. And on Earth, the dream of escaping to a new world begins to lose its luster. But the deeper question remains, are these changes natural reactions, or is Venus responding? As environments collapse and tech begins to fail, how do humans survive? We dive into the harsh realities of life on the edge and the desperate attempts to adapt before it's too late. By now, the romanticism of cloud cities has burned away like Venus's morning mists. What remains is the raw, relentless challenge of survival. Inside the habitats, life has grown tense. The floating cities, once beacons of human ambition, now resemble airborne fortresses. Every system, from oxygen generation to waste recycling, is pushed to its limits. Redundancy layers built for emergencies are being used full-time. And worse, Earth's resupply missions are delayed by months, as the planet's volatile atmosphere makes approach windows narrow and dangerous. Food becomes the first crisis point. Hydroponic systems suffer from fluctuating humidity levels and mysterious mold outbreaks. Genetically optimized crops like dwarf wheat and microgreens begin to fail. Emergency rations, protein blocks made from algae and insect flour, are distributed, but even those must be rationed. Soon, one city, Cytherean Haven, resorts to a controlled population reduction. Non-essential personnel are returned to orbit or Earth. Only the mission-critical remain. Then come the health risks. Even with shielding, prolonged exposure to trace sulfur compounds seeps through protective seals. Respiratory irritation becomes common. Some residents develop a condition dubbed Venusian lung, a persistent inflammation triggered by microexposures. Medical teams adapt with custom inhalers and strict suit protocols, but morale falters, and the psychological toll deepens. Imagine never seeing stars, never walking on solid ground, never opening a window. Some residents spend their days cycling in zero-G rooms, trying to simulate Earth's outdoors. Others immerse themselves in VR environments that replay home landscapes, forests, beaches, city parks, to stave off sensory deprivation. But a new syndrome begins to spread: atmospheric agoraphobia, the fear of the endless acidic skies. Socially, isolation sets in. With communication blackouts growing more common, city populations turn inward. Rivalries flare between habitats. Some begin to hoard resources, refusing shared protocols. Others, fearing contamination from mutated microbes or failing filtration systems, go completely dark, cutting themselves off from all contact. Amid this chaos, early efforts to adapt begin. One breakthrough comes from a small research team aboard Aurora 5, which discovers a synthetic compound that neutralizes trace sulfuric vapors inside city interiors. Another team develops genetically modified yeast that thrives in low-light Venusian conditions, capable of producing both food and limited amounts of biofuel. But these are small wins against rising odds. Meanwhile, rumors grow. Aphrodite 3's vanishing is no longer treated as an accident. It's a ghost story passed from city to city. Some say it was pulled down by a gravitational surge. Others speak of intelligent patterns in the magnetic signals detected afterward. A few believe Venus is not just reacting, but defending itself. Despite it all, humanity does what it always does: endures. The cloud cities aren't shining utopias anymore. They're survival outposts on a world that doesn't want us, but they're still standing. Humanity looks beyond survival to transformation. What long-term strategies emerge? How do we adapt, genetically, technologically, and politically, to life among the clouds? By year 10 of the Venus Initiative, survival isn't enough. The mission shifts from endurance to transformation. The old Earth mindset, maintain, repair, resupply, no longer works in a place where even the atmosphere wants you dead. Instead, Venusian life demands evolution. The first shift comes in architecture. The early floating cities relied on traditional designs: steel frames, glass domes, climate-controlled interiors. But now, cities begin to resemble living organisms. New structures are grown from bioengineered mycelium composites, strong, flexible, and naturally self-sealing against corrosion. These living hulls respond to atmospheric changes, tightening during acid storms and releasing pressure when calm returns. Some cities even begin using Venus's own gases, compressing CO2 into structural elements, reducing supply needs from Earth. Technologically, breakthroughs in AI-driven maintenance allow the cities to become semi-autonomous. Nanobot swarms conduct real-time repairs, monitoring stress points in infrastructure down to the molecule. Artificial photosynthesis units harvest light filtered through the clouds to power internal grids. These cloud cities are no longer mere habitats, they're dynamic, adaptive ecosystems. Meanwhile, a controversial new frontier emerges: genetic adaptation. The Venusian Colonist Genome Project proposes modifying human physiology to thrive in the upper atmosphere. Trials begin in secret, first with immune system tuning, resistance to sulfur exposure, enhanced lung filtration, improved oxygen processing. Then come neural adjustments, circadian rhythm recalibration to match Venus's bizarre solar cycle, and visual enhancements to see through dense cloud cover. Some call it progress, others call it speciation. On the political front, Earth's influence weakens. The time delay, over 5 minutes each way for communication, combined with irregular data flow and growing mistrust, leads the Venus cities to form a new governing body: the Coalition of Skyborne Habitats, KOS-SH. A decentralized, consensus-driven council replaces the Earth-appointed administrators. Each city now votes on shared atmospheric rights, research protocols, and mutual defense. Economically, a strange new economy forms. Cloud cities begin exporting rare atmospheric elements, like deuterium and helium-3, to orbiting stations and lunar bases. In return, they receive high-value goods, quantum processors, advanced polymers, and luxury items for morale. A few Venus cities even offer sky tourism for the ultra-wealthy, short orbital drops to experience life in the clouds, at their own risk. Social priorities shift too. Education focuses less on classical studies and more on planetary systems, bioengineering, and crisis psychology. A new generation of children, born in the clouds, sees Earth not as home, but as the past. They move differently, speak differently, even think differently. This is the Venusian generation, raised in artificial gravity, taught under filtered light, and trained to thrive where no humans ever should. But amid the adaptation, an ancient fear returns. On the radar again, faint, flickering, yet undeniable, are signals from below. Regular, repeating pulses. Too structured to be natural. And then, seismic tremors ripple through the atmosphere, reaching all the way to the lowest floating cities. The cloud cities may have adapted, but Venus, it seems, is just getting started. A turning point. As a second catastrophe unfolds, or a stunning breakthrough emerges, humanity must decide: fight, flee, or evolve into something entirely new. It starts with a tremor. Not a shaking of the ground, there is no ground up here, but a resonance, a hum, detected by pressure sensors across all cloud cities. It pulses every 27 hours in a slow rhythm. At first, it's dismissed as a tectonic phenomenon, a strange echo of subsurface convection. But then, the pattern shifts. The intervals between pulses shorten, the tone changes, climbing into the human hearing range. That's when they realize it's not natural, it's a signal. On Earth, SETI's dormant radar arrays are reactivated. Data from Venus's low-orbit satellites are analyzed. The signal shows fractal-like patterns, self-repeating structures that seem to encode information. Some claim it's a warning. Others believe it's a greeting. A few think it's the planetary equivalent of pain. Venus is reacting, perhaps communicating. And then, disaster strikes. A massive electromagnetic burst erupts from the surface, what scientists later describe as a planet-wide corona discharge. Several cloud cities lose power instantly. Their solar systems fried. Communication blackouts ensue. One habitat, EOS-1, plummets 8 kilometers before emergency buoyancy systems engage. By the time it stabilizes, 200 residents have suffocated in depressurized corridors. This is the turning point. The Venusian sky is no longer merely hostile. It's dynamic, active, possibly intelligent. Panic sets in among some of the population. A radical group calling itself Skybound Exodus hijacks an orbital shuttle and attempts to flee to Earth. The shuttle malfunctions in the upper stratosphere, breaking apart. Fragments rain down, caught in the Venusian wind forever. Others turn inward. Religious sects form around the voice of the planet, treating the pulses as divine communication. One group even begins a ritual practice of meditative exposure, brief, timed walks outside the habitat, in pressure suits, to hear the hum more clearly. But amid the fear, a breakthrough. Scientists decoding the pulse discover it matches an ancient signal, one recorded in the early 1980s by the Soviet Venera missions. The pattern was there all along, buried in static, misinterpreted as surface wind noise. Humanity didn't awaken something. We returned to something that's always been watching. This realization ignites a profound debate. Are we colonizers, invaders, or messengers? In a bold move, the coalition of skyborne habitats transmits a reply, not in words, but in mathematics, prime number sequences, geometric constants, and a tone-based echo of the pulse. They broadcast it from every city simultaneously, tuning their solar arrays as vast antennas. And then, silence. Hours pass, days. Then the pulse returns, this time mirrored, as if the planet understood. No one knows what's coming next, but the choice is clear: escalate or evolve. Some propose retreating to orbit. Others demand full-scale colonization, claiming Venus must be subdued. But a growing faction, scientists, engineers, even young philosophers, argue for a third path: integration. Venus is no longer just a planet, it's a system, a complex reactive environment that may possess emergent intelligence. And if that's true, then our future isn't in fighting it, but in learning to coexist. And maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting for us to grow wise enough to try. In the aftermath of this turning point, humanity must decide how to rebuild. Not just cities, but trust, science, and purpose. What does civilization look like after talking to a planet? The transmission changed everything. After the mirrored signal echoed through the Venusian atmosphere, something fundamental shifted, not just in the skies above Venus, but in the minds of those who lived there. The idea that the planet itself, or some emergent intelligence within it, could understand triggered a profound transformation. Fear no longer ruled the cloud cities. Curiosity and reverence took its place. The Coalition of Skyborne Habitats, COSH, declares a planetary moratorium. No expansion, no atmospheric mining, no disruptive technology deployments until the nature of the pulse intelligence is understood. This is not surrender, it's humility. For the first time in history, humanity halts a colonial mission not because of defeat, but because of wisdom. Rebuilding begins, but it's no longer just about infrastructure. It's about approach. Cities redesign their systems to harmonize with atmospheric flows, not fight them. Structures shift from brute force stabilization to dynamic movement, using smart materials that flex and breathe with Venus's winds. Habitats become more like jellyfish than buildings, alive, floating, adaptive. Scientists now refer to the strange planetary hum as the subconscious signal. It's studied in real time across all cities. Instead of mining the atmosphere, researchers develop non-invasive probes that drift downward like seeds, gathering data without disrupting the cloud layers. One even returns with signs of complex molecules, structures that behave like viral RNA, yet do not originate from Earth. Earth responds with awe and envy. While geopolitical tensions remain, a global effort is mounted to support Venus's new mission. Not to conquer, but to connect. Terraforming is abandoned. The new strategy is symbiosis. Ecosystems in the cities are rebuilt from the ground up. Instead of Earth-centric models, scientists use Venus's own chemistry to create compatible life forms, bacteria that thrive on carbon dioxide and emit reflective particles to stabilize local temperatures, plants engineered to absorb trace acids and store them in inert crystal structures. Venusian biology is born, not natural to the planet, but natural with it. Socially, life shifts. The arts flourish in strange new directions: sculpture grown from crystallized acid minerals, music composed using the frequencies of the planetary hum. Philosophy returns to prominence as colonists debate whether Venus is alive, conscious, or simply reacting in ways we never thought to look for. Schools teach planetary ethics alongside engineering. Even language adapts. Earth terms like alien or colonist are replaced by resident and interlocutor. A new generation of children, born entirely on Venus, grow up with a sense of planetary citizenship that includes not just humans, but the sky itself. One initiative, the Whisper Project, becomes the centerpiece of the new Venusian identity. It seeks to build the first long-duration atmospheric probe designed to descend to the surface, not to explore, but to listen. It will carry recordings of human languages, mathematical theories, and the pulse signal itself, encoded in dozens of ways, hoping for another response. And in the background, Earth's environmental movement surges. Seeing the humility with which the Venus Project has adapted, public demand grows for a new approach back home. Less exploitation, more integration. After all, if we can learn to live with Venus, maybe we can relearn how to live with Earth. But not all is stable. Rogue states and corporations on Earth see opportunity. Venus, after all, still has untapped resources. And the cloud cities, peaceful as they are, sit vulnerable. Eyes are watching, plans are forming, and deep below the clouds, the pulses grow stronger. What legacy does this leave for humanity? How does this moment reshape our destiny and our place in the cosmos? Years have passed since the first mirrored signal changed the course of humanity's relationship with Venus. What began as an experiment in colonization has transformed into a grand philosophical and scientific odyssey, an entirely new chapter in the human story. And now, with stability slowly returning to the floating habitats, a profound question lingers. What legacy will we leave in the clouds? Venus has become a mirror, both literal and symbolic. Its thick atmosphere still hides the surface, but now it reflects something deeper. The evolution of human intent. No longer just a resource to be mined or a platform to escape Earth's decay, Venus represents a second chance, not just for survival, but for self-reflection. This shift ripples outward into every domain of human life. Back on Earth, Venus becomes a cultural phenomenon. Artists compose sky symphonies using data from atmospheric pulses. Architects design earthbound buildings inspired by cloud city flexibility. Environmentalists point to Venus as a cautionary tale, a planet destroyed by greenhouse gases, now cautiously explored by the very species pushing Earth in the same direction. The term Venus syndrome, once a fringe warning about climate disaster, enters mainstream discourse. But it's more than fear that spreads. It's hope. The Venus Project proves that humanity can adapt, learn, and, most miraculously, choose restraint. It becomes a model for a new kind of civilization, one rooted in coexistence rather than conquest. Universities launch planetary ethics departments. Children grow up reading stories not of battles on Venus, but of harmony, caution, and the wonder of listening to a living world. Politically, Venus sparks a transformation. The coalition of skyborne habitats becomes a neutral model for governance beyond Earth, multinational, non-hierarchical, science-led. Other celestial ventures, like the Mars Terraforming Project and the Europa ice exploration colonies, adopt similar frameworks. A planetary-scale consciousness begins to form. Humanity is no longer just of Earth, but of the solar system. The most fascinating legacy may be psychological. For the first time in history, humanity grapples with the idea that a planet, an entire world, might be sentient in some emergent, non-biological way. This redefines our search for life in the universe. Scientists reanalyze data from past missions to Titan, Europa, and even Earth's oceans. The question changes from, is there life out there? To, are we listening correctly? Meanwhile, the Whisper probe descends slowly toward Venus's surface, broadcasting a curated symphony of human expression. It carries voices in every language, images of Earth's biodiversity, and the pulse response sequence that first hinted at intelligence. No one knows if it will reach the surface intact or if something will respond. But the gesture alone becomes a milestone in human history. As a species, we've always wanted to conquer the stars. But now, for the first time, we're learning to talk to them. And the cloud cities? They remain, floating islands of innovation and introspection, suspended not just in Venus's skies, but in humanity's collective imagination, a vision of our future. What do these revelations mean for the long arc of human destiny? Will we become stewards of the cosmos, or architects of our own quiet extinction? The year is 2163. Humanity no longer dreams of reaching the stars. We live among them. The cloud cities of Venus float on, their sleek, living structures glittering against an amber sky. They are no longer colonies, they are cultures. Their residents speak hybrid dialects, eat food grown from genetically engineered Venusian flora, and celebrate holidays not tied to Earth's orbit, but to the rhythmic pulses that still hum from deep beneath the clouds. Children born in these cities have never known a blue sky or green grass. To them, Earth is a place of myths and history, like Atlantis in reverse. Yet, they do not reject it. They honor it. The Earthborn are known as Terran ancients, respected as carriers of the memory of where it all began. Elsewhere in the solar system, Venus has become a model for expansion without domination. The Europa research arcs adopt its consensus-based governance. Martian terraforming efforts slow down, pivoting to non-invasive ecological modeling. Even Earth itself begins to change. Inspired by the Venus experiment, major nations restructure their climate policies. The lesson is simple but powerful. We must live with the world, not on top of it. Technological progress is unrecognizable by earlier standards. Solar energy harvested from Venus's upper atmosphere now powers half the orbital network. AI systems, once tools of efficiency, have evolved into mediators, translating planetary patterns into human understanding. And the great question, was Venus ever alive, remains unresolved. But that's the point. It taught us to ask better questions, to listen deeper, to see the universe as something more than empty space and cold physics. And then, the Whisper probe stops broadcasting. Not because it failed, because it received a return signal. It's faint, it's cryptic, but unmistakably intentional. Some argue it's natural resonance. Others swear it's structured thought. No one agrees, but everyone understands. The universe is not silent. It never was. We were just too loud to hear it. Now, a new kind of mission begins. Not one of conquest or colonization, but of communion. Humanity stands at the edge of a new cosmic identity, not as invaders, but as participants. We once feared that building cities on Venus would awaken something ancient and hostile, but what if we were awakening ourselves? So, what does the future hold? Maybe we become caretakers of many worlds, designing civilizations to harmonize with alien ecologies. Maybe we meet other forms of intelligence, biological, artificial, or planetary. Or maybe we continue to struggle, to adapt, to grow. Not in spite of our flaws, but because of them. The legacy of the Venus cloud cities isn't in their technology or their bravery. It's in the humility they taught us, that even in the most hostile places, life and wisdom can bloom. Maybe our destiny isn't to escape Earth, or even to master the stars. Maybe it's to understand them. So, what do you think? What if we really did build cloud cities on Venus? Would it save us or change us? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you volunteer to live in the sky? Or would you stay grounded on Earth? If you enjoyed this journey through the clouds, give it a like, subscribe for more what-if science adventures, and remember, the future is only science fiction until we build it.